Hey, everybody. We're going to talk today about some different field issues that might run into while shooting match. And it correlates over to hunting as well, because we all know when you go hunting, you're never going to run into the perfect weather. There's always going to be issues. There's different things that we can do to try and mitigate issues when you're shooting in the rain or wind or different things. And of course, I'm joined by Matt today. How you doing, buddy?
Good, good, good. How you doing, man? It's actually been a little bit.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks. It's just that's this time of year. It's with shows and everything else. It's a freaking nightmare. I don't know. I always have uh excuses though, but it's just a pain in the butt trying to run businesses and then do these as well. But I mean, they're worth it. That and snow. Holy shit, man. We just keep getting more and more freaking snow. I think um there's in Heber, which is I've got to go up there for a meeting today. I think there's like 4 feet of snow in town.
Yeah.
And they haven't got that since I think read on the news the other day, since like in the 60s, 30s, 60s, something like that. They've never had this much rain. So we went from years of drought to okay, we're done now. We need spring. I mean, yesterday being the first day of spring and it's still snowing. So yesterday it snowed in the morning. The sun came out, melted all the snow in my yard, and then it snowed again all night. So now the snow's back up in my yard, and I'm like, man, freaking animals are hurting, everything else. They said that the deer are just starving, the turkeys are
Yep.
starving because they can't get the food. I'm like, this isn't good. This isn't good for the animal. It's good for water. I mean, it's good for the lakes, it's good for the reservoirs, but it's not good for the animals because they went from, 2 years of hardly eating anything to now they can't find food. And I don't know, it's got me a little worried about how our animals are going to be because it's going to take them quite a few years to try and regroup from this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, so for those who don't know, I live in Reno, Nevada, and my house is about 4,500 feet. And you'll see animals being pushed down into neighborhood level all the time now. And because that snow is just hit and run, and the snowpack is just insane. So there's water everywhere, which is wonderful, but the food is kind of hard to come by. So, and I actually watched a couple videos of Army and Air National Guard dropping a feed and to ranchers' livestock and everything, these cows and stuff that are hung up in places they can't get food to. So that's pretty cool to see that. I don't know if there's anything happening on the wildlife side of that, but it's pretty neat to see it that there is solutions in place. But I know we've been just getting hammered, and it's actually warming up a little bit. So like yesterday, cold in the morning, got up to 50 some odd, and then on my drive home, it was darn near whiteout snow. So you can't win. And yeah, I think this spring's going to be kind of tough too. It is what it is.
Yeah, and I heard that it's going to be really hard on the animals because then they're not used to the green all of a sudden, and it messes with their stomach. So I mean, they're just fighting a losing battle. I mean, here in Utah, they keep building these big residential neighborhoods in the winter range, and then all these people bitch and moan about all these animals coming into their houses and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, the other day, the DNR on the Utah Highway Patrol had to push this whole herd of like 200 elk back up the canyon because it was on the country club golf course because they didn't have anywhere else to go.
Yep.
And then they're like, well, we're just going to chase them. They're going to be right back there because they're looking for food. Up in northern Utah at the R&K hunting ranch, they're spending thousands of dollars trying to feed the deer and elk up there. I think he said, I noticed on one of his posts, they were feeding like 3,000 deer or something, trying to feed them to keep them alive because the deer are just there's so much snow they can't even walk through the snow. I mean, it's just nuts how much snow there is. And
Yep.
yeah, we need to start. Everybody was like, pray for water. Well, we need to start praying the other way, pray for melt, but not too
Yeah.
fast because it's going to flood everything.
So that's already seen in the West, man. We've already gotten flooding. Our rivers are rising, and that snowpack has come out down off those mountains pretty hard. So
Right.
not fun. So
Mhm.
I know we talked about covering some weather issues. So kind of relatable to this last weekend, we traveled to San Luis Obispo, California, on the coast, and we got a mix of weather: beautiful sunshine, amazing green rolling hills, and then rain. So we live kind of in an environment like you do in Utah, high and dry for most of the year. So we don't really have to worry about much wet weather, but when we do, it's always an issue, and snow too, because snow turns to water real quick. So anyway, I wanted to get into that a little bit and shed some light on shooting in the rain. So, and it covers like all forms of like practical shooting, like matches, target shooting, recreationally, and then of course hunting. But you see the darndest things when water's involved, and I know you've experienced this too. And the biggest thing you're going to see is just people getting frustrated with their gear, and also cartridges being overpressured. And that is more often seen in the hunting realm than some of the target stuff. People have kind of learned in the match realm to slow their stuff down so it doesn't overpressure. But you introduce water into a chamber, no good. So
Right.
I figure we could hit on that a little bit, and then if I know we're on here live, to get some questions or something, that'd be cool.
Well,
Um,
I've just got it on YouTube. I'm gonna start
gotcha.
pushing it over there. We haven't. I need to just hook it up and just make it go on the Facebook page because that's where everybody comes from. But yeah, I mean, we kind of hit this a little bit a while back with Scott Peterson of the AMU. He kind of talked about issues with chambers and water and different things. And I saw this in Idaho. Um, one of the guys that I went with built this load that was really good, and it was a little hot. It was a 260, and he left his case open, and it rained, just on the ammo itself. And then you add even that viscosity from the water onto your bullets, which is minimal. But if you really think about it, you try to shove that into your bore and you try to push all that water down, your pressure goes through the roof. So he had primers coming out and everything else, and he couldn't figure it out. He was like, well, what the hell? This load was fine, before I came up here. It's got to be, environmental stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, it is environmental stuff. You've got water. You put issues into this. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
that's one of the big issues is, that I guess you could say.
Yeah. So, like even running matches, I try to tell people, hey, make sure that that load is water safe, because you don't know what you're going to run into, and especially like on a hunt or something too. So, a lot of people like chasing speed,
Mhm.
and pressure is speed. So you don't want to find yourself in a situation you're hunting, you spend all that money to go somewhere, all that money for tags, everything, and you take a shot, you might miss, it's inclement weather, you might go to you take another shot and now your bolt's locked up because of that excessive pressure from that big old cartridge you got in there because it got wet. So really staying in that realistic pressure realm is key for about everything you do with bolt guns, and well, gas guns too. But it's just you have to be in the realistic pressure realm. If you know that a load is hot going in, man, you might want to think about backing it down or using something else, because it's nothing good comes out of it ever. And snow is the same way, because snow with the slightest bit of warmth turns into water and you've got the same issue. And then the other thing that happens with water is it holds dirt. So mud and contaminants and everything gets into everything and it just stays there and it causes a lot of problems. So all weekend I was using one of the Coltec rifle or Coltac rifle covers, keeping everything as warm and dry as possible, and rags and pockets. And then, I always have Ziploc bags full of those blue shop towels
Mhm.
in my pack, just because anything dry is worth a premium. And once something's wet, you can't just make it dry out of nowhere. So having something dry to lean on is key. And that's something I think that needs to make their way into everybody's match packs and hunting packs as well, even in the truck, is just having dry items. So microfibers, shop towels, something in a Ziploc that you can keep dry is key. So and
Mhm.
and and then having something be able to clean that dirt that's in the moisture, because you don't realize it, but you'll end up drying your stuff out, and then what's on everything? Dirt. And
Right.
people don't take that into consideration. And that's all aspects of shooting the long range stuff, because man, it adds up so quick and you don't notice it because you're focused on everything else.
Yeah. I know. I mean, you can go on Amazon now and buy, a lot of different like waterproof baggies and different things that you can put that stuff into, whether it's hunting, you can put your ammo into it. I've seen, forever everybody's, used the little buttstock pad where you shove your bullets down in it,
Yeah.
and then you pull it out and try to shove it in. And I used to do that a lot, but to your point, you had to get wet and then the dirt would get on it, or the mud and everything else. And it is hard, but you want a quick, easy access to more rounds if you're shooting. Like, God forbid you shoot a shitload of rounds at an animal and you miss that many times and you've got to reload. But The same thing with, like our Kydex holsters that our rounds go into when we're shooting, because I have those. But the nice thing is your stuff's flipped upside down so that the water and stuff isn't getting in there. And trying to keep that water and that dust and that dirt off of your rounds. But there's kind of a big difference between the hunting and the competition side. Everybody has that in their mindset that they want to push that round as fast as they can possibly push it, which has kind of been the myth for the longest time. And if a lot of us really went back and ran the ballistics between this velocity and this velocity, there's not enough difference to make it worth trying to push the cartridge that hard, if that makes sense. You talk to Tate Streeter and those guys, and they're like at the bottom node of a lot of their velocities, because then that gives them a window. It gives them longer barrel life. It gives them less pressure. There's a lot of things that come into that.
Yeah, and a lot of people that aren't very immersed in this realm will look at things in draw per inches, but that doesn't really translate. Yeah, it's giving you, say the box says 200 yards 0, and then it gives you 83 inches of drop at X yards. It's not really telling you a whole lot. And they look at that and they compare cartridges off that, like, oh, this one's flatter. Okay, that's great, but at what cost? And what does that actually mean to you? Like, once you start getting into it and understanding how ballistics work and cartridges and the balance, like, you'll start not thinking in that way, and you'll start, okay, well, I'm gonna have to adjust for elevation anyway, whether it's a tenth or a half minute more or whatever it ends up being. It doesn't matter. You're still going to compensate for it. Windage is going to be darn near the same. But what's more valuable? A rounds that you can use, or one round you can use? Like, so kind of think of that. Because if you're playing that pressure game and you have inclement weather, like I said, and your bolt locks up, or you got that super hard bolt lift where you're hammering on the darn thing to get it out, well, basically you just kind of skirted around danger, like a pretty dangerous situation. And I would never do that again. And then the damage you're going to cause yourself with the rifle is not worth that next round. So it's, or at all, because I've seen rifles get completely locked up and the lugs will gall, and then you've got a stuck rifle. Like, I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So, because pressure's pressure, doesn't matter how big that cartridge is. Once you hit 70,000 psi, it's 70,000 psi in any cartridge. Doesn't matter how big it is, and that does damage. Like, that will do damage. So, and I know we can't measure pressure, but pressure signs are shown in a number of ways. There's tons of articles and everything. We don't got to go through all that. There's tons of ways to measure pressure visually and physically. So, man, it's just, it's a hard thing to tell people, like, educate them on, because they just don't want to listen.
And my biggest thing, and I've talked about this from the very beginning, I see too many people trying to make a cartridge do something it wasn't designed to do. Cartridges have a velocity range. That's what they were designed for. They have, the velocity correlates, just like you said, with pressure. Every cartridge has a certain pressure that it needs to meet, or you're going to have issues. So if you think that you need more velocity, you're going to have to start thinking about, okay, the next pressure or the next cartridge to make sure everything lines up. I hear everybody, yeah, I got a 6 Creed and I'm pushing it at like 3,600, 3,700 feet per second. I'm like, holy shit, you're going to be asking for issues there at some point. And that's the thing, is if you want the cartridge to hit that because you think you need that velocity, you might want to look at something a little bit bigger, because you're to your point, you're gonna have issues, whether it's right now or whether it's in 500 rounds or whatever it is. You're gonna have issues at some point, and you might be, your eyes. I've had that issue. I've had stuff blown up in my face because I let somebody else load it, things like that. That shit scares the crap out of you, man. And then you add environmental factors like we're talking about, like rain, dirt, things like that. So you just took a 70,000 psi and went to 90,000 psi just by adding a little bit of water. And then all of a sudden you're locked, you're losing primers. You're just rolling the dice at that point to see when the freaking thing's going to blow up, which you don't ever want to do.
No, and another variable you have is you don't know how well that brass you're using is going to stay together. That's another unknown. You don't know if that piece of brass has got one more firing to it or 20. It doesn't, and most of the time people aren't using very expensive brass. They're using reloaded factory ammo stuff, which isn't the highest quality. And that presents problems too. So The pressure game is not something you really want to play with, and people go, well, I'm going to run it fast anyway. Hey, don't act like someone didn't tell you, because I mean, I'm pretty sure people have heard it before, and you're right. Like, one of my online classes, I teach, don't try to run a 6BR cartridge at 6 Creed speeds. Like, that doesn't work. There's simply not enough powder capacity in that little cartridge to equal the other one. Like, that's why you run something smaller, so less power, less recoil, a little bit more stable velocity window. So, like, you have to stay within your means. So, and you're right. Look for that next cartridge if you need more speed or a bigger, heavier bullet. So, like elk hunting, I went with 300 PRC because I could push that 225, which is the bullet I was after, at like a manageable velocity, about 2840, and it wasn't going to overpressure should we get into rain or snow, which we did. So, hey, and that worked out awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a balance to it. And another thing with weather is keeping yourself dry, good quality equipment. People scoff at the price of good rain gear and nice stuff, but man, you do not care what it costs when you're in the elements.
Yeah, you want to be comfortable. You want to be comfortable, because when you're miserable, everything sucks.
Everything. Your morale tanks, your ability to problem solve tanks, like, it's just, you get frustrated and you're just like, I just want to go home. Well, no, I mean, so if you spend a little bit more money up front on good quality, waterproof gear, good boots and things like that, like, that pays for itself the first time you go to use it, and you'll never question it again.
Right.
Like, everybody hates having cold, wet feet.
Right.
So combat that right out the gate. Good waterproof, maybe insulated boots, depending on the climate, and done deal. It goes for your gear too. Make sure everything's waterproof. Your backpacks, you've got, I always buy, if it doesn't come with it, but most of my packs have the built-in, rain covers. That pays for itself, like, the first use, because now all your gear in your backpack is dry and clean. So, like, that's one way to combat all that. And that's not just shooting, that's general, like, outdoors kind of common sense. And then using good waterproofing stuff. If you want to waterproof your pack and all your gear, that's easy. There's washing stuff, there's spray on stuff that's decent. Like, that technology's come a long way. So Stone Glacier M-Set, yeah. So I actually have a Stone Glacier pack, and then I have Burley Stock, and I have Mystery Ranch. I think I've tried just about all of them, and man, they pay for themselves pretty quick.
Yeah. Back to the brass and things. I think what we need to do is let's talk about that a little bit, and then what I want to do is I want to go over some things that maybe me and you have found that people need to add to their kit. Whether it be hunting or, kind of to your point of waterproof. But, I had the same conversation with Alpha Munitions a while ago. I love those guys up there. They're they're putting in the work to get quality stuff. The problem is, and we had a long discussion about this, is they've taken their brass to a next level, which means it can handle more pressure. The problem is people think, oh, it can handle more pressure, so I'm going to push it faster. Well, your action can still only handle so much pressure. So if you're trying to stick, and I was a little bit worried about that with those guys. I'm like, you guys are going to push this. It's going to be badass, but people are going to try and push that level, which they shouldn't be doing, because let's say it hits 70,000 nominal, fine. But once you hit 90, God forbid you ever hit 1,000 or 100,000, that action's probably coming apart. Everything's going to be back in space and everything else.
That's a kaboom scenario. So 55 to 62,000 is like safe operating pressure. And I believe proof loads are in the 70s. I want to say that's just a guess. And I know SIG was touting that whole SIG Fury cartridge that has a just hellacious pressure to it. Not for me. I got to tell you, that's not for me.
The problem is an AR can still only handle so much pressure. Everything, the way it blows. And the thing is, you blow the chamber open too fast. You got enough of that, then you're starting to have ripped apart shells and everything else. I've seen it. Trust me. It's not fun, and then you're trying in the middle of a shoot or something, you're trying to pull a piece of brass out of your chamber that's only half, so you can't reach in there and grab it or anything else. I've seen that a bunch of times. There's a reason that was one of my jobs at Barnes, was testing and proof loads, and we did a lot of the ammunition testing. and we could only hit. That's why a lot of ammunitions are slower, because they have to hit a certain pressure. It isn't necessarily about velocity. It's a pressure window that we have to hit that is caught by expensive freaking machines and expensive
Mhm.
proof barrels and all that. And we test that to see where it can go and what the brass can do. And a lot of brass can't hold up to what you're doing. Now, a lot of people are like, man, my primer pockets got loose all of a sudden. Well, it's probably because you're pushing the freaking thing too hard. And
Yep.
then again,
Pressure's got to go somewhere.
yep, and then you add all the different variables. I mean, there's different things that could be. Your headspace could be off. I mean, there's different things, and you can usually tell when that is, because then your brass will start stretching a little bit. You can see a ring around it. And there's different things that you can see when it comes to that. But it's definitely something that y'all need to think about. And then when you're going to a match or when you're going hunting, look for cases or something that's going to keep all that stuff dry. There's so many things now on Amazon or Coltac or whoever you want to go to that can keep your ammunition dry, keep it away from the moisture, keep the dirt out of it, things like that. I know a lot of people. I still use depending on the match, I'll still use the plastic cases. I mean, they take up a lot of room in your bag, but I know for sure that everything in there is dry and it's sealed away from dirt and everything.
Clean and dry.
Right. And
That's the
in a
key.
hunting scenario, that's might not be it. I know they've made, little ones that are a lot smaller that can hold it, but like the Coltac, I can't remember what it's called, but you put the ammo in, it's like a
Yep.
folder,
The big book.
the binder, yeah, and a
Yep.
few different companies make it, but that one has been one that I've loved lately. The only problem with competition shooting with it is it doesn't hold all your rounds. So you've got to transfer stuff back and forth. But in a hunting scenario, it's super narrow and it doesn't take up a whole lot of room, and you can just shove it in your pack and away you go. So, look for those things. Do your research on how to keep your stuff dry. And it's gonna it's gonna save you a lot of heartache and along, because we all know if you get out there and shoot and your barrel's full of water and everything else, and you get a round stuck and you got a bull, you got an elk, you're shooting a match, trying to get that out of there, you're screwed. So make sure you're doing that. So the next portion I want to go over is some of the things that you've seen to make it easier. Now, one thing that I use all the time is I go to Walmart and I buy one of those little small tarps. I think they're like a 8x8
Yeah.
tarp or something like that. And I use it all the time because there's different reasons why I have it. Number one, I can cover all my stuff if I'm glassing and it's raining. I can lay that out and cover it all so that my gun stays dry, so that everything stays dry. And if I'm hunting and I kill something, I can lay that tarp out and keep all my meat clean as I'm cutting it out. So there's different things but they're small and they pack up really, really small. So that's something that you can keep in your pack, whether you're competition shooting or whatever else. And you can even hide under it where you're shooting to get out of the
Yep.
moisture too.
So I've got some similar in my hunt pack. It's and all it is a cheaper backpacking tent footprint. They're super thin
Mhm.
and light, and they fold up to like nothing, and you can use it for a bunch of stuff. And it's for a smaller tent, but you can use it for anything. And it's nice and clean. It's in a bag. So if you do have to lay meat or something on it, and I've used it, you can go and do that. So yeah, tarps are always kind of a must. If you absolutely know that you're going to be in like really crappy situation, like weather-wise, they pay for themselves, and you'll be super thankful that you can keep stuff clean and dry. Like that's the key.
Right. Another thing that I've seen a lot of people use is they use like electrical tape and tape off their muzzle brake and different things, which is fine, but man, that shit sticks and it doesn't come off. A funny one that a lot of people use is either they cut the finger off a glove and put it
Mhm.
over their brake, or they use a condom or something. I mean, yeah, it's funny, but it's worth keeping all that crap out of your bore, because a lot of people will sling their rifle and muzzle up, and then all that crap goes down into your chamber and it doesn't have anywhere to go. And then the problem is now not just your chamber's wet from your round, the entire bore's wet. So the pressure goes up astronomically from that point. So I guess the biggest thing is if you can keep the rifle muzzle down or put something on the brake
So
or the muzzle end of it.
the easy one for that is you can go to drugstores and buy what they're called finger cots. They're white and they're just the finger portion and they're latex and they're white or blue, and they're called finger cots, and those are super small, and you can stretch them over muzzle brakes and bare muzzles and stuff, and they do a pretty good job. And then the other thing I've seen with that is people will muzzle down and then drop their pack or something, and that muzzle goes straight to the dirt, and then they've got a tube full of crap.
Yeah. Yep. I know, and we've ran into this 100 times with also whether it's up or down, your scope getting full of water and dirt
Mm-hmm.
and everything else, and, a lot of people have caps on them, but then it also still fogs up because they're cold. So one of the things that you can mitigate that is like the Armageddon Gear Trojan. That's a popular one where it goes over the action, the scope, it goes over everything and then snaps on the bottom and keeps everything out of that. And it even has a carrying handle so you can seal that. It's just one of those things to invest in to keep everything super clean. That was another thing that we haven't really talked about is, and Matt, you've shot my match, Dog Eye Precision. Everybody got the moon dust. The moon dust killed everything. Triggers was one of the big things. And I want to kind of hit on that real quick is, how to maintain your trigger or how to keep everything out of that. Keeping your bolt closed helps with that. In a lot of match situations, they make you keep the bolt open for safety reasons. But, if you've got that Trojan, it also encompasses the trigger. But one thing that I try to keep in my pack, the little bottles of Roncinol lighter fluid. Try and keep the trigger cleaned out, because what happens is there's only so much space between the cassette or the outside of it and the sear itself. So if dirt and stuff gets in there, the sear can't work and it can't release the bolt. So the bolt goes past and fires. If all that crap gets dirty or if it gets water in it and it rusts or anything else, that is an issue. And I've seen a lot of the other issues. I've seen people, well, I'm going to do better and I'm going to put a bunch of oil down in there. And that's one of the worst things you can do for a freaking trigger. And that's mud. That's what the Roncinol is good for. Or, if you're near brake cleaner or something that cleans it, but then it goes dry, and that's what you want to do. But those little bottles of Roncinol, you can get them at Walmart or wherever. And I always keep that in my hunting pack and in, my comp cat, because I can hurry and kind of rinse that crap out of there, because it will get in there and you will have issues no matter whose trigger it is. Everybody's will. And my match, it didn't matter what trigger it was, they're all built similar and they all have the same issues when it comes to water and moisture and dirt.
Yep. So I'm going to backtrack to the scope thing. So my rain and snow kind of method to this is, you could buy the spray things of anti-fog. So you clean the lenses real good, spraying with anti-fog, and then follow the directions. It usually buffs off, kind of like a wax. And I've seen people use like Carnauba wax too. Whatever the scope manufacturer says is good, use it. And then you can also take the blue Scotch shop towels, because they don't scratch lenses clean, and you can fold a piece up and put it in your caps too. And then if there's moisture on it, it'll help absorb the moisture in the fog, and then just take them out. And that's an easy way to clean up the lenses without tracking a bunch of dirt and crap in there. So that works pretty well. With the triggers, yes, that lighter fluid stuff is primo. And the why lighter fluid is because it cleans and then it evaporates. And you can and it's got a really like a pinhole size cap, so you can squirt it in there and use some fluid pressure to push all that crap out of any of the contact surfaces and the sears. And then, man, it'll work awesome. And you just leave it dry. And then non-chlorinated brake parts cleaner is good because it's pressurized, and then you can do it. Canned air can also work, but you have to be careful with canned air. Never use it on scopes. Found that out through a friend the hard way. I've never sprayed a scope with it, but he ended up tipping the can upside down, and it cracked that big old lens in the front just immediately, because it was so cold. The temperature change was so quick that it almost shattered. It just cracked, and now his scope is unusable. Luckily, the manufacturer warranted it, which is great. They may not everybody, I don't know, but that was a hard lesson to learn. But you can also buy the lighter fluid little bottles, the little guys, at like most gas stations have it. So if you need it, have it. When going to Utah, Idaho, Nevada, there's always a bottle around. Like experienced shooters will always have a bottle around. It doesn't matter if it's in their pack, their truck, their Airbnb, whatever it is. And every day I'm cleaning it out just squirting it and cleaning that stuff out and making sure everything's nice and clean and dry. The bolts, I'm going to clean the same way. You can use lighter fluid to clean your bolt too, depending, if there's no rubber or anything weird. And then I never put oil on a trigger ever. It's always bare, but the bolts either have a high quality action that's like DLC or nitride coated that's kind of self lubricating, or use the most minimal amount of oil possible, like the most minimal, because yes, it does lubricate, but it also retains dirt and makes like this nasty abrasive paste that does damage in the long run. So keep everything nice, clean, and dry. If you can get away with just running a dry bolt, run a dry bolt, and you'll be thankful for it, because that dirt just collects everywhere, that dust, and man, it's terrible. You live in the West, you're going to encounter that.
Have you ever used the graphite stuff that you use on pistols? Have you ever tried it?
I have, and I've used moly oil too, which leaves that really fine residue. I have, but honestly, like my rifle actions are all Lone Peaks that are nitride coated, and they are slick as it comes, like naturally. So I end up not using any oil anyway. But some factory stuff, I realize you might have to use a little bit. But graphite stuff works pretty well. It's just hard to apply, is all with that stuff. And then the light oil, like lightest amount of oil possible, like thin oil you can use, and that usually works pretty well.
Like, yeah. This is all stuff that we can all learn from. I mean, we have all had issues going down. Another one that I want to hit on real quick is the Fix-It Sticks. So I'm going to do a shameless plug for Fix-It Sticks right here. They have a little kit that is a cleaning rod kit, and it's super small. I think it's maybe like 1.5 inches, 2 inches wide by maybe like 6 inches long, and it has all the rods in it for a full rifle. And I've had people come find me on the range because they're like, man, I got a freaking shell stuck, I can't get it out. They're trying to put sticks, they're trying to put shit down in there, and they can't get it out. So something like that you can invest in to keep it good. Now, I see a lot of guys and gals go to matches together. Now, maybe you guys could do a loadout of stuff that you need, and maybe this dude goes and buys this dude goes and buys this. And so as you all go, everybody's got that piece of the puzzle to make sure that you guys aren't going to have any issues when it goes down, and of course you're all going to have your own Trojans or whatever it is to cover your actions. And when I started, we never had any of that stuff has just come out. You can always, if you don't have money for that kind of stuff, just find a shirt, go find something old that you can slide over all that stuff and just kind of clamp on there, or whatever it takes to try and keep that stuff clean, to make sure that you're not going to have any issues out there on the range. Because again, that's one of the worst feelings in the world, having issues when you're out hunting or shooting or whatever, and you just get mad. Once you get frustrated, the mental stuff starts kicking in, and it just goes barreling downhill from there. And to Matt's point, with being comfortable, I mean, once whether it's hunting or competing or whatever, once you're not comfortable anymore, it's miserable. And then you don't want to be there. You don't want to do anything. And we've seen that a lot in like the South and Texas and stuff. I've seen matches where it's just a flood. I saw Tate standing in a puddle at the Leupold Classic, and stuff like that. And, being prepared for that stuff and watching weather apps is a huge thing. I did it forever. I would never watch the weather, and then I go to a match and I go, man, I wish I would have looked at the freaking weather before I did that and been more prepared as far as, the stuff that I was bringing, whether it be, rain gear or whatever else. And yeah, I think there needs to be some investment in, that type of stuff too. Like you said, Matt, I know there's tricks, like taking trash bags and putting them over your boots to keep your boots clean, if it comes down to that. There's a lot of cheap things that you can do to make your life better when it comes to shooting and hunting, where you don't have to go buy the super expensive stuff. But when it comes to rain gear, I think you do. That's one of the investments that you need to make. Don't you agree?
Yeah. And I don't ever want to be fighting my gear. Try to make something happen, or resorting to those last minute kind of bush fixes, like your trash can or trash bag thing. I mean, it is right. I'm pretty sure if you've been in the service, you've ever had to wrap your stuff in, a trash bag or something to keep it nice and dry. Like, I don't ever want to find myself in that situation. So I'm going to take care of that the way I can. in like the most effective way possible before I'm even put in that situation, so I don't have to backtrack. So, and I know we talked a little about, like what's in my pack as far as like kind of emergency stuff. So here's a few things that I'll keep in my match pack no matter what. Like, and you gotta remember that you gotta look at every match or hunting trip or something as its own. So I don't ever have like the same exact loadout for everything. I kind of look at like, okay, what am I getting myself into? What's the weather like and everything? But there's a few things that never leave. The fix it sticks are always in there because I have a bunch of bits and things in there for my rifle. I can pretty much tear that thing down. I've got little collapsible aluminum shooting or cleaning rod, aluminum, not steel. And I can put that together if I need to get a case out or a quick swab or something. I can just clean a barrel. That's always in the pack. I have a lightweight, like 511 water resistant. It's super light jacket that rolls in nothing. It's in a side pocket and case, and that's good for rain. Not too heavy, but it'll keep me warm and dry. And it's just a super lightweight, non-intrusive layer. So I always have that. The one thing I got from Regina Milkfitch over the years ago was a Glock pistol cleaning rod with their little brush. So if you've ever bought a Glock, which most of us have, it is the little black rod with a little clear nylon brush on it. And that's in every single one of my packs, no joke. Anytime a weapon goes anywhere, I have one of those. They're great for cleaning out chambers real quick. They're great for getting out stuck cases. So if you ever have a case head separation, you just pop the bolt out and then jam that nylon brush in there and it grabs the neck and you can pull that case right out and it's like a 30-second fix. You don't have to Cerasafe anything. It'll pull it right out. And that's actually saved quite a few shooters over the years, including myself. And then E-tape. So I'll have a Sharpie that's wrapped in electrical tape. So it's like basically an inch around. It's a little fat Sharpie guy, but it's got tape on it. And now I have electrical tape anywhere I need to go. And that's great for, taping things on the fly. And then you've got a Sharpie with that. You got a permanent marker. And then for writing in the rain for matches, I have those little grease pens, the little retractable black grease pens. And then there's always some write in the rain note cards somewhere in a pack. So in case I need to make a dope card or leave a note or something, I've got a waterproof means of making that. And then I've got tape too. So that's kind of like my basic fallback plan for everything. So and I always got a knife on me. So that's just how I roll. So I don't know if you got something similar, but those are kind of my must-haves.
Yeah, I mean, those you've never gone up to a stage and shot your first one and looked over at your freaking drop chart and went, shit, it's gone because it rained on it. That's happened. I've seen it happen before. I actually went to I'm trying to think who made it. I think it was IDTS, the dry fire system. He sent me some that mount to my scope, and they're all grease pens. So no matter what it rains on it, it's just, and then every stage I can just wipe it off, so I don't have to have a shitload of cards. I mean, that's my preference. And then after that stage, I just wipe it off. I know a lot of people will go through and, if they get the match booklet before, they'll go through and write all of that, but nothing sucks worse than those getting all wet. Back in the day, Marcus Blanchard made one that slid up in a little fancy case that, kept it dry and stuff. But after a while, everything gets wet if it's raining, no matter what you do. And that would get wet. So I'd run into issues there. I've tried the armband. I guess you guys just need to understand that you need to figure out what works for you, but that's what's worked for me is that, because then I can just wipe it off when I'm done with a dry cloth and on to the next stage. To your point, what I've used is a Sinclair. Sinclair it's got a handle on it and it's a little bit longer, so I can go up in there, but I'll keep a bore mop on it just to keep my chamber clean. And then, and I guess I probably need to stick a nylon brush in there to do what, to pull that out. But in a lot of cases, what happens is it sticks and your extractor rides over the edge, and you need something to shove all the way down the bore to try and knock that case out. So, having a kit that's long enough that you can shove that down in there to get it out and not scratch your bore or your crown or anything else, that's super important, especially in the rain, because you're always going to have that it might stick because it's just wet. There's so much crap in there, but keeping that crap, that stuff dry.
Yep. And the last thing you want is a rifle that doesn't work. That's
Right.
that's the key. And you're 100% right with your point that after a while everything gets wet. Like there's no like the waterproofing, water resisting stuff, it only lasts, so long. So if you're out there, make sure you have kind of some redundancies and some different bags of stuff ziplocked up, and try to keep it as dry as possible, and it'll lengthen your day. So, and then yourself too, warm and dry. And then I think I've grown weaker in my older age now, but I've got hot hands packs and like everything now. Because man, it is nice to throw those in your jacket and have nice, hot, warm pockets when it's just really crappy out. And some people will frown on that, but man, it makes life a lot nicer when you've got nice, warm hands.
Right. Yeah. Like, again, back to it. If you get miserable, everything starts tanking because then the mental game gets into it. And, once you're miserable, you're just at that point, you're just riding it out. You're not
Yep.
competing anymore and everything else. And the mental game is one of the biggest games that we're going to face as shooters, whether you're a hunter or a shooter. And when the mental game comes into it and you start going downhill, it's hard to get it back. Super hard to get right in the back in the right mindset of being cold and everything else. And again, that works with both, hunting or shooting alike. What else? Is there anything else we need to cover, that they might need in their packs for matches or for hunting? I'm trying to think.
It's a good baseline. It's just, and I have been in, like, say, the Midwest. Midwest is notorious for this, where the forecast says it's going to be great, and then all of a sudden that rainstorm moves in out of nowhere. So, having the stuff around isn't a bad idea no matter what, right? And it's just meant to make your time a little easier on you. And whether you're on day 2 of a 2-day match and you've been in the suck for 2 days, or you're on a week-long hunting trip and you're day 5 and haven't had a shower and you're miserable and you haven't eaten well and you've been out 18-20 hours in the day, like being clean, dry, and happy is the key. Like you're talking about the mental game, whether it's any realm you're in, being clean, dry, and happy is the key to success. So, and you'll see the successful guys are the guys that like play to that. So if you go into it knowing that, you're going to be a lot better off.
Right. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. If you've got questions on this episode, hit us up. What I want to try and do is maybe me and Matt will get together and write out some of this stuff with links, put it on the website so that you guys can click the links and see what we use. That's just trying to make it easier for everybody to go on there and get what we would recommend. Now, there's always different things. And if you guys have ideas or something that we didn't cover, comment on this, send us a DM, because I am always liking ideas to make my life easier. And I know Matt's the same way. So if you guys have other ideas, let us know. Appreciate y'all for listening. Again, reviews are welcome. On the podcast sites, whether it be Podbean, Apple, wherever you listen to the podcast, leave a review. It helps us a ton. When we switched over from Long Range Addicts to Long Range Tactics podcast, we lost a lot of that stuff because we had to change the name. So please go help us out. Doesn't cost anything. Only takes a few minutes to write what you think and give it a review. That helps us out a ton. So we appreciate all of you for listening, and it's constantly growing. We've got new sponsors coming on for the next little bit that I'm excited about. I'm trying to redirect the growth of LRT to people that I want to be in line with. So I'm excited about that. And of course, you're going to see a lot of Matt, hopefully, and some of the other guys from LRT might join us from time to time. And again, if there's something that we haven't covered that you would like us to talk about, send us a message and we'd be happy to do it. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks, Matt. And have a good week.